guy named Madden commits to UCLA. For those of you that like a guy named Nico, you probably know who I'm talking about. Madden
Iamaleava.
commits to the Bruins. Now, you know where Tennessee is in the future. George McIntyre, who's not as highly rated as Nico was, but you are still talking about the elite of the elite. Nobody turns down the third, fourth, fifth best quarterback in a class, right? Nobody says, "Oh, darn, just got him." He's just a 5-star. So, and McIntyre is that. So, is he number 2 in the nation like Nico was? I don't know, but you could get involved with this Madden situation. But I've seen far too many times, and I want to discuss some of them, where package deals are maddening, and oftentimes they happen at the quarterback position. So we're going to talk a little bit here about the leak situation. And for those of you younger than let's say Caleb, you might not remember that situation. There's the Clausen situation. There are all kinds of times in which you try to make package deals work at the quarterback position, but they don't work. So I haven't seen Madden play, but just in and of itself, I think it's probably better for all parties involved to get too intertwined. And unless he's the greatest thing ever and Tennessee felt like they needed to go after him, I think they're probably fine with him going to UCLA.
I think so too. And also, I was asking Dave this morning, I don't believe they have any other younger brothers. So it's not even like you have to do this to try to get somebody else. And they have their quarterback for 2025, George McIntyre. So they already have their guy. More importantly, not only is George McIntyre more highly rated than Madden, he's not going to come at the same cost. If Nico's coming at a price of $2 million a year, what do you think Madden is going to come for? Or I don't think he's going to cost more than Nico, but you're going to have to shell out some way more money for him than you would have for George McIntyre. And so I don't think it's as big of a deal. And you're right. Like, you can do – Tennessee got CJ Leak so they could get Chris Leak. They probably would have gotten Chris Leak had they never picked up CJ Leak, honestly. Had they never done that and had the disastrous situation where they had to bench him against Georgia in 2002 because Casey Clausen was hurt, they probably end up landing Chris Leak. But because the coaches had to bench Chris Leak 2 drives in, CJ Leak 2 drives in, Chris Leak felt that they lied to him, that they broke their promises, that they sabotaged him.
And I will say this. I covered all those teams. Everything that Caleb said is exactly right.
Yes.
110% right. And they took Rick Clausen to get whom?
To get Jimmy. And then
and then we saw how and then we saw how that worked out because they thought Rick Clausen was mistreated by the media. Maybe some in the Clausen family thought his last name rhymed with Crooker. But anyway, they just don't work. These whole sort of recruiting combos just never work. Like, how about Evan and Elliott Berry? But for goodness sake, they're twins. Okay, give me other recruiting combinations where you go into a school and you say, I'll take this guy if you'll give me this guy, or this guy really wants his buddy to come, and so we'll take them both. Or I'll take this guy who's not a very good quarterback so I can get his younger brother. They just don't work out. They don't. 9 times out of 10, they don't work out. I think this is a quiet, good thing for Tennessee. And I don't mean anything bad about Madden. I don't mean I think it's a quiet, good thing for the whole family that he's not at Tennessee and you have to sit there and put more pressure on him. I mean, what happens? So Nico goes out there and he's a superstar. So there's more pressure on Madden if he were to ever come to Tennessee. Now, what happens if Nico's disappointing? Then there's pressure on Madden to resurrect that hype that's come with his family name. Now, I think Tennessee is probably happy he's at UCLA. Nobody's told me that. I'm not reporting that. But I'm just telling you, I would be good with that unless he was one of those generational talents, Caleb.
So there is the Colquitt family, though that's the pipeline. You want to get one to get the other, but they're all individually good. But yeah, You are right. And the thing you don't want is a situation like in 2025 or 2026. Because here's the other part. When you have a great, truly generationally great player and they go on to be great in the pros, and I think Nico eventually will, you want them to always still represent you proudly, right? If you're Tennessee. What happens if Nico goes pro? He does well at Tennessee, he becomes a superstar, he goes pro, and then Madden comes in and he loses the starting job to George McIntyre. Does Nico all of a sudden have a little bit of hostility towards Tennessee? That's a very uncomfortable situation to have and be in, which is something you don't really want.
Well, like you said, though, there's not a third quarterback. So
No, but I'm saying if Madden were to come in, George McIntyre is there. If Tennessee had gotten Madden and then they had to, I think George McIntyre would beat Madden out. They have to sit there and tell Madden the job's not his. They give it to George McIntyre. Does Nico then, no matter what he did for Tennessee, feel a certain bit of hostility towards the university because they didn't give the starting job to his younger brother after he left?
Oh my gosh.
And then there's
I don't know, but I will say this. I don't see the Clausens back in Knoxville a lot. And I know that's not an easy trip. I certainly don't see CJ Leak at many functions. So how about we just leave it at that? So yes, there would be some hostility. I'm not sure that I would care, but there would probably be some hostility. Got to remind everybody every Tuesday. Now, John's on vacation this week, but he will be back next week and we'll have John back here. And he is brought to you by our good friends at Joe Newbert Collision Center. We absolutely love them. Joe Newbert Collision Center. I'm taking my car there soon for a little boo-boo, and I feel confident that I will get just an absolutely fantastic quality craftsman work job. And I'm also positive that I'll be treated fairly because their long decades-long history in Knoxville. Joe Newbert Collision Center brings you our Tuesdays with John Adams.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Okay, so my guy, Caleb Calhoun, all over it Friday night. Not sure what everybody else was doing in the media, but my phone was blowing up with a lot of off-the-hook sports action. And by the way, we're going to have a newsletter coming down the pike here very shortly that I believe that you will like. And also, but Caleb was all about Chaz Lanier Friday night. We'll talk about that. But we do have a couple things more that I want to address on Madden. Here's the other thing. Let's say you have the great option now. Let's say Nico has an incredible career. Let's say UCLA is not what Madden thought it would crack up to be. You still have the transfer portal. So none of these promises are made in absolute stone. You can't tell me that if things don't go well at UCLA, and even though not as talented, a similar skill set, that Madden wouldn't think, I wonder if Coach Hype would be interested in me. And then somewhere Josh Heupel would say, the Madden kid might be a good fit. Even if he's not the number one starter, he might do really well in this offense. So nowadays, it's not completely ruling anything out for him to commit to UCLA as Nico's younger brother did.
No, it's not, but I don't think he would transfer to Tennessee because, again, George McIntyre is there. Another brother pipeline we forgot about. Do you think there was...
But let's say George McIntyre got wooed by somebody else. Do you think Madden would take a much harder look at Tennessee?
I do think that. Yes, I think that too. And so that would be intriguing. Now, what I ask you, Dave, I'm having a little fun here. So I want to go back to the 90s real quick because people believe that Eli was always to Ole Miss. Do you think if David Cutcliffe doesn't take the Ole Miss job and is Tennessee's offensive coordinator, do you think Tennessee's ever in play for Eli? Or do you think he was always going to Ole Miss no matter what?
Oh, he was not going to Ole Miss until David Cutcliffe. He would not have gone to Ole Miss had David Cutcliffe not gone there.
Really?
I don't know if he would have come to Tennessee. David's never told me that, but that's just understood. Wink, wink. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, Because the way they tell the narrative was Peyton wanted to carve his own legacy and Eli just wanted to follow in his dad's footsteps. But I had thought that Tennessee might have been in the running for Eli had David Cutcliffe not gone to Ole Miss. And I always felt Ole Miss hired David Cutcliffe just to make sure they didn't lose out on another Manning kid.
Well, I mean, yes, they did. Could they have hired, I don't know, who would have been a quarterback guru at the time? Jeff Tedford, and maybe he would have gone there for the quarterback tutelage, maybe. But golly, man, if I see my brother do what his brother was in the middle of reinventing the way the game is played offensively in the NFL with the freeze plays and having at least two plays at the line of scrimmage. I mean, he was absolutely changing the game. That's and that started with Cutcliffe. I mean, that's like saying you have the ability to drive this incredible Porsche in a lawnmower race that they used to have on ESPN Ocho back in the day.
I agree. So we talk about angering former players. What if Eli Manning does commit to Tennessee? Do you think there's an off chance Casey beats him out for the starting job? If they're both at Tennessee? I don't think Eli was that much better than Casey in college.
Golly, well, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be. This is the difference between this show and another. I'm going to tell you, oh, well, absolutely not. He's going into the Hall of Fame. He won 2 Super Bowls. But if you would have asked me at the time, I thought that Eli was a little bit overrated and he was getting more first pick love because of his lineage. And that was not a great quarterback class that year in the NFL draft. So there was a time where I would have agreed with you. I would have thought that, but I love Casey's guts. Right.
Okay. But also I agree. And people compare them, but they only compare them after seeing Casey developed by Randy Sanders and Eli developed by David Cutcliffe. Imagine Casey developed by David Cutcliffe. I'm thinking he might be better than Eli.
It's an interesting conversation.
This might be another topic one day. Who would have won the starting job between Casey Clausen and Eli Manning? And just for good measure, Chris Sims commits to Tennessee too that year. And let's see who wins the starting job post Steve Martin between those three.
Yes, Chris Sims, the best official. I mean, just best official visitor ever. That's who you want. You want a guy that's going to come on campus, commit to you, and then change his commitment, which throws your quarterback recruiting crazy. And then in his first interview at Texas, he says that Tennessee is segregated in their football department. Thanks, Chris.
Which, by the way, if he felt that, why did he commit in the first place?
There you go.